What is @state, @bindable object, and @environment in SwiftUI? In this video, I'm going to explain to you what they are, what they're for, how to use them, and give you some actual live demo code to help it make all sense. So, what are they for? They are different ways of managing state. So, state management. We've got internal, detailed to master, and multiple levels deep. What are these? Well, internal state is when you just have, for example, a custom control, a custom button, and you're managing state that's just private to that. So, for example, if the button is on or not. Detail to master is when you have two views that are just communicating with each other. So, for example, you might have a form getting some personal information, and you might have a field that lets somebody get a pop-up list in order to choose a value, like their favorite color, right? So that might be in a separate screen. When they select the value, that's the favorite color in that screen, you want it to be reflected back to the master. And finally, we have multiple levels deep. And this is most important for SwiftUI because SwiftUI really encourages us to have our views defined in a very compound way. In Cocoa Touch, it wasn't really like that. We had basically our one view and our one view controller. We might have a custom view here or there, but SwiftUI really flattens things by eliminating the view controller and encouraging us to have a large number of smaller purpose views that we build upon and compound until we actually get the bigger view that we want. And these all have different issues in terms of complexity of passing data and notifications about changes of that data back and forth. There are also three kinds of data that we're dealing with in Swift. We have integral data, that's simple and immutable, things like int or double or boolean. We have objects, which are complex, right? Objects can have multiple properties, and objects are definitely mutable because you can change any different value of a property on an object, and the object is still its same thing, right? And then we've got structs, which are complex, right? They can have multiple properties, and they're sort of immutable and sort of mutable, right? They're immutable by default, but if you've been programming for Swift for a little while, you know that you can actually declare particular methods to be mutable and actually let you change values on the struct. So they're in kind of an in-between place, and that makes things a bit more complicated. So SwiftUI has a few different state strategies that I've outlined in this chart. Basically, if you know whether you're dealing with integral data or complex data, and whether you're dealing with changes being restricted internally, or whether you want changes to propagate, you can look at this chart and you can see what strategy to use. And we're going to talk about all these tags, how they're used in just a minute. So you can see if we have restricted access and it's integral data, don't have to do anything special. If it's complex, we can use a struct. This might be our default by using Swift. But when we want to propagate changes, that's when it gets a little bit more complex. If we want to propagate changes to an integral value, we use a state. If we want to propagate changes to a complex value, we have to subclass bindable object and then either use the decorator ObjectBinding or EnvironmentObject, depending upon what we want the access method to be. That is, are we going to pass the value in the constructor, or do we have a multiple level hierarchy where we might want a more simpler method? All right, so what are these decorators? They are @state, that's when we're keeping things internal and simple. @ObjectBinding, when it's external and complex, and we're really just doing some direct communication that's most appropriate for a master detail kind of situation. And @environment, which is when the variable is going to be external and complex. And that is most appropriate when we're going to be passing values multiple levels on the hierarchy. So let's go ahead and look at some code. Okay, so here you see I've created a simple view called private view in Swift. It's going to be showing what it's like when we have internal state or a custom kind of control. And I am going to make this just a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to add some state here. I'll say @state variable, let's see, flag equal false. And let's see, I'll give maybe an H horizontal stack. And I'll make a button. And for the action on that button, I'll say self.flag.toggle. And I will give a text of click to that. And let's see, I will now say if flag equals true, then do that text. And now I'll just reformat things a little bit. Okay, so you can see that we have a simple little control. It has a button and a text field. If the flag is true, then it's going to show the text. If it's false, then it won't, right? SwiftUI has dynamic updating going on here. And you can see we're accessing our private state variable right up here. So let's go ahead and do our preview. So we'll click that resume. We'll make this just a little bit smaller. And to actually have it be interactive, we need to press that blue button there. It's running. Okay, now, and if we click that, you can see hello world shows up. If we click it again, it disappears, right? Because we're checking the flag true and false. Here's an example of using state. We're dealing with integral data, just a Boolean. It's all basically internal to the view, easy peasy. Now, let's move on to a master detail kind of situation. All right, so here I have my simple master view. I'm going to create some custom data and a detail view as well. So there'll be some intermediate compiling errors coming up as I type this in. So bear with me. So I'll create my custom data class. I have the subclasses from BindableObject. Because we're using BindableObject, I also have to import the combined library here. I have to create a publisher so that any changes to instances of my data object get propagated. So I say var did change equals a pass-through subject, which in this case will not return anything and will never deal with notifications. And now I'll create a couple properties. My name is equal to guy. And we'll care about changing this one. Age will be float equals 52. And we'll say did set, did change, dot send. What's going on here? Well, we're saying that whenever this variable age on our data gets modified, then tell our publisher to send a message to everyone who's listening that it actually changed. Oh, well, my program had something else here too, so I'll call this data 2. So I'll eliminate that collision. Okay, great. Now in my master view, I'll have object binding, var data, data. And in my view here, I will create a navigation view. And I'll say a vertical stack. And move this up here for now. And I need one more. Okay, and I'll reformat. Great. And in my vertical stack, I'll change this. So I'm going to publish \data.age. Little typo. Great. And I'm going to have a navigation link. And the destination is going to be a detail view. And I'm going to pass that my data. Good. And I'll say text detail there. All right. That's all good so far. Say struct detail view. This will have an object binding, var data, data. And I will create my vstack, var body, some view, vstack, and I'll make a button and a slider here. So a button, action, self.data.age is equal to float 52. I'll just say a reset value. And give this a text of reset. Great. And now I'll create my slider. Value bind into data.age. We'll say the slider will range from 18 through 60, and we'll step by 1. And we'll give it a little padding just so it looks a little nicer on screen. And then we'll have a little text underneath just to show the current value of that slider. Data.age. Great. Okay, that looks good. Let's call it master view. We need to pass in an instance of data. We'll call this data 2, right? Yeah, okay, let's remake this. Awesome, and we will resume over here. And we'll click on our little play. Okay, great, so you can see the value is initialized 252. When I click detail, a new view should come up, which it does. You can see our back button. And as I move my slider here, you can see this value changes, right, from 18 to 60. You can see our reset button works as expected, puts back to 52. So let's change this to 33. And when we go back, we should see that value reflected. And in fact, it is, right? We didn't have to do anything complicated. It all happened automatically because of SwiftUI. And that is pretty awesome. Now, what's the final step? Well, the final step is to imagine that there are many layers of views here. And we don't want to have to pass our data bit from one view to another, to another, to another, especially when the in-between views may not really care. They may not be doing anything to our instance of data. It might just be the top level view and the bottommost level view. So in that case, we're going to use environment. Now, warning, this doesn't actually quite work in the current beta of SwiftUI. I actually have to do a little extra work, but I'm going to show you exactly what the syntax would be, and I'm going to make a small modification, show you what I need to do to actually get it to work. And the changes are actually very small. First, I just changed my object binding to EnvironmentObject in both of my views that care here. Great. And now down here, I change this from passing a value to the constructor to declaring in my environment object, I'm going to actually pass the value here. Data 2 constructed. Great. And again, I don't need to pass anything in the constructor there, so that simplifies. And I remake, and this should all be copacetic, and in fact it is, right? Pretty nifty. Look, very few changes necessary. Now, what do I actually need to change in the current beta to make it work? Well, unfortunately, I actually have to pass in to the intermediate view the environment value as well, which means right here, when I'm creating the navigation link in the destination, I have to say environment self.data. Now, ultimately, this should not be necessary, but right now, it unfortunately is. So I'll go back here. I will resume. I'll play again. Is it ready? And detail. We'll move this over. 25 and 25. You can see we're back again. So there you have it. What state, bindable object, and environment object are, how to use them, and when to use them. I think this makes it a lot more simple. I know when I was trying to figure it all out from the examples that Apple gave, it was all a little bit unclear because the reasoning was shot through very quickly. So I hope you found this video useful. If you liked it, please click like, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to come out with a ton more of these videos for you. And if you're interested in some additional information, please check out my website, solutionsinswift.com. Until then, rock your code. Peace out.